Hey everybody, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist Adam Kury. Adam plays with Candlebox,
Indeed.
and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about Adam's playing with Candlebox and all that. But Adam, so that people can get a chance to know you a little better, tell us about how you got started, your bass journey. How did that happen?
From a young age, I was always very interested in music in general. When I was a kid, I wanted to take some guitar lessons and absolutely hated it. It was really boring. They went one string at a time, each note on the string, and then after a 6-week course, I still had no songs I could play on the guitar.
Oh no.
But that was like when I was probably like maybe 7, 8, somewhere, maybe a little older than that. But anyway, but I always still had an obsession for music, and we moved up to Alaska. We lived in the Aleutian Islands. My father was in the military. And when I was enrolling for school there, going into, I think, 7th or 8th grade, I went and I talked to the music teacher because I wanted a class where I didn't have to do real school work, but maybe I could even learn, guitar, bass, whatever. And it was a very small school, and he said he didn't need a guitar player, but he could use a bass player. So my parents bought me like some $80 Sears bass to get going in the class. And, I found that I really liked it. I took to it. I played both. I still play a little guitar now, although that's not my main instrument, mainly for writing and things. But I found that I really loved it. And I got so far into it that I couldn't go back to guitar because I found that when I tried to play guitar in a band, it just didn't feel the same. I didn't feel that low end, the vibrations and the connection with the rhythm section. So that's really where I found my home with it, and it's been great. It's something I've loved and I've pursued for all my adult life, even obviously before that too. Mm-hmm. And it's been great. I'm very fortunate that I'm a working musician and piecing together a living here and there and doing things. So I consider myself very lucky. I'm very grateful for that.
Got you. And kind of making a connection between your younger years and present. Did you pursue any, additional training, or did you basically just worked it?
Yeah, I did. And that was a very frustrating thing. I always say, these days, kids are very fortunate. You can go onto the internet and YouTube, and you can learn everything about your instrument. Where, for me, I had to go find another person who played and try and get secrets from them because there was really not a lot of sources, especially where I lived at that time.
Sure.
But when I got out of high school, I went and I moved all the way to Florida to pursue a band that never came to be, and I found myself at a crossroads, and I decided to go to MI out here in California because I knew I wanted to move to Los Angeles because the music scene was very vibrant here and still very happening. And so I went to that school for a year, and it provided some good things. It, more than anything else, it focused me to realize that I could learn all these other styles and I could pick up all these other things. But really, in my heart, I'm more of a rock guy. I branch out into some other areas, but that's what's at my core. I had a epiphany in a Latin workshop, and I was sitting there, and I got up there and I played this groove, and the instructor really liked it. I was one of the ones that really nailed it. And he said to me, great, well, now go out and get in a Latin band. In about 5 years, you'll be a top pro. And I realized that I enjoyed playing that, but the dedication of 5 years, it made me think to myself, what do I really want to do? What kind of stuff do I want to play? What kind of music do I want to write and record? So it got me to focus, I think, more than anything else out of that experience.
Gotcha. And then from that point, bands, what did you came, because Candlebox is like 1990 ballpark.
Yeah. Well, I actually came into the picture with Kevin, the singer. We had another band called the High Watts, and I started that with him about 15 years ago. Okay. But I've been playing around and doing things, and actually just before that, I decided to get back into the education. And as far as my playing goes, I took some lessons from jazz great Bunny Burnell.
Okay.
And he really, really opened up everything for me. I mean, I was always a decent player. I had feel, I knew how to do things, I had a good ear, but he really was able to throw me into the deep end of all of the detail behind keys and modes and how it all fit together. And he really got the pieces fell to place theory-wise working with him that I had had before. So, but now to go back to the Candlebox thing. Yeah, so Candlebox, I started in Candlebox in 2007.
Okay.
After the band reformed, because at that time when we did the High Watts, Candlebox was on hiatus. I think 99 the band stopped and then started again in 2006.
Gotcha. And from what I understand, and especially with most recently, you guys had a release, and I want to make sure I don't mix these up because there's Disappearing
right
in Airport, which is a CD.
Yeah. Yeah, that one came out last year, 2 years ago. It was the studio album.
And then most recently, you were also putting on other hats, doing mixing and being an engineer with Disappearing Live.
Right, yeah. So I mean, mixing is something I've always, had an interest and a passion in, and again, with the modern age, now I have a studio in my house because we can have Pro Tools on our computers and we can do things, and I've gotten some access. So over the last few years, I've started to get in there and try and do things. I've done a lot of a lot of live recordings, mixing. I did our live CD that came out, although we don't really mention that too much, a few years ago. And then this most recent one that just came out, as things will happen, it started as one thing and evolved into another. We were just going to do a couple of live songs for our pledge campaign.
Okay.
And so I ended up mixing 6, and then they said, hey, these came out really good. Can we add another song to this? And then to my surprise, it was being released for Record Store Day. So they actually did these up and released them. So, I'm very happy and proud of it. I would have loved to have gone back and gone over them in one more pass because I didn't know they were going to be sold,
Sure.
But overall, I'm pretty happy with how they came out, and it's a lot of fun. I feel like mixing is just as creative as playing and writing and recording. It's an art to in itself that you can pursue. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, and it's always kind of fascinated me that you'd have people that were engineers. I'm doing air quotes here because when I think of engineering, I think of like an electrical engineer, a chemical engineer, but you're sound engineers who weren't necessarily musicians, but they knew all the slides and all the knobs, and I think in a pinch they could patch wires together, and they knew where stuff plugged in and all that.
Sure.
And it was kind of a different skill set. And so like the musicians were at the mercy of the engineer. And a lot of times when I hear recordings, because we get things that are sent to us a lot, especially when it comes to the bass, engineers tend to just kind of keep it a little too low for my taste. I was like, I want to feel it because it's more than just hearing it. I want to feel it. And so you don't want to put it so that it overwhelms the rest of the group. But by the same token, if the bass is going to cut loose with a lick, I want to hear something more than like muffled notes in a shoebox about a block away. Hey, wait, I think the bass did something there. And,
sure.
And so I think it's important when you have both the skills as a musician and as a bassist, where you can say, okay, I need this level to be where it's a perceivable, feelable kind of thing. It doesn't go over the rest of the band. It complements the music. And I think a lot of engineers don't necessarily grasp that. And I say that because of a lot of the CDs I listen to. I'm kind of going, what were they thinking? And amazing players, which is really the disappointing thing. I'll see it come in. I'll see a name on them going, oh, wow, this guy's great. I can't wait to hear it. And then I go through the CD and I barely heard him on there at all. And I'm like, what happened? Yeah. I know he was there, so that's wild. Do you find that as an engineer or applying yourself to the engineering part, has it altered the way the choices you make as a musician with the bass? Because you're kind of going, okay, I know I want this to leap out this way, or how's this going to fit?
Sure. I mean, I think that it kind of goes hand in hand. I think the two things work together, both the playing and the engineering, where, as you said, you want certain things to cut a certain way or to sit a certain way. I'm very, when I'm recording something myself, I'm very aware of which bass I'm going to choose, which tone, how I'm going to play it. I mean, I play my go-to bass, I've got a 72p bass that I probably do on like 80% of everything that I do. But I play it many different ways. I'm generally live. I'm a finger player. I find in the studio, I'll end up doing a lot of palm muting. I mean, I have regular picks. I have felt picks. You know, the stiff ones. I also got some ukulele picks, which are very spongy, and they're great for certain things. So it's really boils down to the song and how does it want to sit. And it's a lot of experimentation. And I think you're right. I think the bass, to get clarity across the entire mix for all the instruments, the bass is the toughest one, and it is the one that most gets kind of left aside because it's not necessarily the attention instrument. It's like you said, at moments it jumps up. Certain styles of music it is, but especially when you talk about pop and rock, it tends to be, you know, kind of the glue for anything. And that's a tricky spot to get it where it's being the glue, which it has to do, but also has some clarity and spark when need be. And it's again, it's a very creative thing because it's an ongoing struggle. You know where you want things to sit, but it really comes down to who's going to own this frequency space. And each instrument has to have it. And it's between the instrument itself, it's, you know, the performance that was put down, what was in there quality wise. You know, sometimes you're going to get something that's, you know, like more jazz players tend to have, you know, a bridge pickup, a really tight low mid sound, really focused sound that jump out like that. So you have to EQ your guitars and your drums differently if that's what you're given. You know, and vice versa between all the instruments. You know, rock, we tend to get a lot more of the warm low end, and you want it to still cut. So you tend to scoop a little bit, and then you'll high pass more of the guitars, and it's always, you know, who's going to live there in that frequency, and that's the fun of it. So yeah, a lot of thought goes into it, and it definitely doing both things. I think one helps the other for sure. Absolutely,
and I think I almost wonder with some groups and bands that you've heard that you'll kind of go, wow, there was that bass line that just made it. I mean, just earlier we were talking about some of McCartney's work.
Oh yeah.
And we were talking that a lot of that stuff, a lot of what he did was kind of on a second run, so it wasn't recorded that way initially. But when he came back, you know, he modeled it, and he decided he was going to take this more lyrical approach instead of just, you know, banging out root notes nonstop or something. And when you listen to those songs, even today, you know, you just go, wow, I get a whole different feel for this because of the choices that were made on the bass and that you could hear it.
Yes, yeah. Well, and in that era, you know, especially when you're talking about the Beatles stuff, I mean, the 60s were a revolutionary time for music and for bass as an instrument as well, because in the 50s, yeah, the electric bass had come out, but really they were trying to mimic an upright bass, which, you know, those are very difficult to get to pop in any recording. I mean, even when you're talking about traditional jazz stuff, you know, that everyone drops out for the bass solo because otherwise you can't hear it. And it's, you know, when you got to the electric bass and you got to all these new sounds, and you know, John Entwistle was one, you know, put the round wound strings on there. He was one of the forerunners of that, to get new sounds that cut and sat into a recording a whole different way. And then McCartney himself was just he's such a great musician, and it's not just his bass playing, but obviously his songwriting, his just complete grasp of melody, and his genius shines with anything that he does. So for him to play bass, that was great because he wasn't originally the bass player. You know, when he took over that role, then suddenly all of that came out, and I think he opened up new possibilities for obviously countless musicians out there, which is it still holds up to this day. And they were very good at like doing many takes. You know, they would beat up a song until they got it right, and they did that. As far as the replacing it, yeah, later on they did, but in the early days it was a band. It was 4-track. They used, you know, 2 tracks for the band and 2 tracks for vocals, and that was it. So it's that's I think becoming a lost art. You know, I enjoy when I get to record. We try to record with a complete band, you know, whenever possible. I'm not a big fan of, well, we've got a good we've got a good drum take, and we'll fit some bass around it later. It's like, because then you're painted into a corner. If you didn't play together, the ideas you have might not fit anymore together, you know?
Well, and a lot of times you lose the chemistry
Of
when
course.
you don't have, everybody together. On the other hand, and again, it comes back to engineering, because back in my day, I played with a really big group, and we had a really heavy percussive element to the group, and that
Sure.
bled over into other mics, and so they were always walling them off and
Yes. Oh,
putting
yeah.
putting blankets and doing everything they could to try to. You could
Hmm.
hear them. I mean, you couldn't help but to hear them, but you needed to isolate them somewhat, or else they were coming across in the vocal mics and in the other string
Yep.
mics and everything, and it was just a real mess. But moving on from all the fun engineering and recording, in addition to playing with Candlebox, I understand also you're really busy with a lot. You've got a side project, Pete RG.
Yeah, Pete, I've known for years. We've had a few different bands over the years. We continue to record. We've been actually in the studio. We're in the process of throwing together some songs. We'll be out doing a quick, like 1 week run next month, and then go into the studio to knock out another album as well. Which is that's another great group. A lot of just quality musicians in it. It's a very different style than Candlebox, but it's enjoyable just the same because again, it's about the quality of the people you're playing with, the songs that are being written and done. So it's good work. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Also, Kevin and I have another band called Le Projet that's features it's us and Morgan Rose from Seven Dust, and also Brian from Candlebox is Brian Quinn is involved in that. Matter of fact, that's how we ended up in Candlebox. Is he came down to do a session for Le Projet, and he knocked it out of the park. And so then when we needed another guitar player, we called Brian up, and that got him into the fold. And so yeah, it's a lot of fun. Very different bands, very different challenges. Of course, Morgan Rose he's a complete genius freak on the drums and musician, and so I took a lot of pride in making sure that when we tracked that I did my bass live with him, and it's tough because his very complex rhythms and time signatures, but it's a lot of fun. It's a good challenge.
Very, very cool. And in addition to that, I understand also you were involved with the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp just
Yeah,
earlier this year.
yeah, I was. That was a great time. I'd love to do that again. It was it was a great experience because like anything, you do it long enough and you get caught up in your day to day. And I think going and doing that Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, it brought back that feeling of when you were a teenager and just the excitement of it, because you have all these guys that are there that are looking to up their game. They're looking to have some fun. I was a camp counselor, so I got to guide a group through, and it's fun because you get these people that you've never met before. You don't know where they're at skill wise and everything, and so you dress it up and it's instant. You have to jump in there. You have to find a song. You have to agree on a song. You've got to learn it and you got to work on it. And so it was a good time. And the spirit of that camp was really good. I mean, all the other, pros that were there and everything for me, it was also great to hang out with them because some of these guys were guys that I grew up, watching as a teenager, and it was great to be alongside them and, hang out with them. And so that was a great experience.
Very cool. And this one you guys were doing was at the LA.
Yes,
location,
it
right?
was in North Hollywood here in Los Angeles. And it was fantastic. The shows at the end were at the Whiskey and Lucky Strike Bowling Alley, where we did the performances. So
Fun. Yeah, we have visited the facility in Las Vegas.
okay, yeah,
Which is
I haven't been there yet.
It's nice, but again, I kind of get there's so much music happening in LA, and that's kind of a recurring theme.
Right.
It only makes sense to do something like that in LA because you've got so much going on. And granted, there's a lot in Vegas, but it seems like it'd be more of a destination that you'd come from somewhere else.
Yeah, I think so.
If you're going to do it in Vegas, because just the people that are already in Vegas are probably not the ones doing the camp.
Right. Well, and I think Vegas is kind of changing in that there's there are more and more shows being put on there, and there's a lot of touring professionals are going there. But LA is still kind of more the featured spot for people, and I think you're right as far as at least the counselors for the camp and everything. You got a huge number that live out here. So
Absolutely. And what projects do you have looking forward? What stuff are you planning on being involved with? What's next?
Well, I'm continuing to tour, obviously with Candlebox and Pete RG. We're doing some dates, and I'm not sure what's going to happen if we're going to get back with the Le Projet stuff. And I'm actually looking to get a little bit more mixing going on here. Looking this summer to start to beef that up and make a more of a go at it, more official go at mixing rather than just my band stuff. I do sessions and stuff here at home, and it just it's a mix of everything. As a musician, it's like you always dream of having that one gig that does everything for you, but that's usually not the case. And even if you get that gig, you need to do other things to inspire you and keep it going. So the answer is D, all of the above. Doing a lot.
Well, and that is so true, because we do have a chance to talk to so many musicians that even when they have an ongoing, steady, all the time kind of thing going, they're constantly working about something else. And, even when they're on tour, they're like, yeah, I'm playing the tour right now, but in the back of my head, I'm writing, I'm doing some stuff in between, because when I get back, I know I want to do this. And, it's kind of a juggling act. I know I didn't ask, but it's always good to touch base. As a bassist, you're probably, because you mentioned a favorite bass, but what gears predominantly are you using?
Well, again, for the Candlebox stuff and most of the other stuff, like, again, my 72P bass is always a good go-to. I've got some really old vintage Ampeg heads. I've got like a 69 original. I've got one of the Skunkwork ones from the mid 80s. And I picked up just recently through Aguilar, I got one of their tone hammers, which is incredible. I'm blown away with what that amp can do. So that one's great because I throw it in my suitcase. It weighs 4.5 pounds, and I'll put it up against a SVT Classic. I mean, it'll drive an 810 just as well. And, with tube amps, they're finicky. Sometimes you get one that's in great shape and it sounds amazing. Sometimes you get one that needs some work and it's just not going to get it done. So for me, for bass amps, it comes down to the A's. I've owned Aguilar, Ashdown, and Ampeg. They've all done well for me in different ways, and I can't complain. Bass-wise, I've got some old stuff. I've got an old 72 Rickenbacker. I've got my 5 strings are both Lakelands. I've got those. I've got the P bass. I've got a Fender Jazz. Trying to think of what else I got there. I've got a fretless P bass around somewhere too. But so again, pick the right instrument for the tray. But I find that P bass just always works. It's a reason they made them that way for over 60 years.
There you go. Well, and a lot of times, and we do see a lot of gear acquisition syndrome. And it seems almost kind of like that search for that perfect sound.
Right.
And looking to see what's going to give you what you're looking for, the kind of music you're playing. And then other considerations come into mind as we age. Weight starts turning into an issue. And I always remember, and I've said it in more than one interview, I talked to Chuck Rainey. And he's playing an exotic, and it's... he basically pointed out that he likes it because it's light.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be carrying no heavy bass around. Whereas
I agree.
I've picked up a few of those Thunderbirds. You start getting some mahogany going, and you're going, oh my gosh, this. If I were 18, maybe.
Right.
Unless I'm able to sit down, I don't think I'm going to be able to play this,
Yeah, they do weigh a ton, and if you're lugging it around 2 hours a night, it can get to be a lot. It's like guitar players with Les Pauls are fantastic, but at some point they're like, oh my God, these things are weighing a ton. But fortunately for me, I've always liked the lighter basses, so I've always gravitated, especially with the Fenders in particular. I find that the lighter the bass is, the more it resonates in the right way for me. I know some guys love the ones that weigh a ton, those mid 70s and everything. But for me, I love the late 60s, early 70s ones, which tend to be a little lighter. So that's probably saved me a little bit over the years.
Absolutely. And if you had any advice for young musicians, because a lot of our readership and the people that see this are people that are aspiring. And, they're just getting started. What gem, what pearl would you have for somebody who wants to pursue a career as a bassist?
I would say first and foremost, don't limit yourself. If you say you're going to be a bassist, make that your primary instrument, your focus, but learn to play a few other things. Mm-hmm. Learn to write. Even if you don't take any other instruments and play them out on stage or in the studio, just the experience of transferring your musical knowledge and your musical quest to another format is always good for you. One of the regrets I had was when I was younger that I didn't, like learn piano. I wish that I was proficient on the piano. I'm a hack. Yeah. So I think that any instrument you can learn and add to your repertoire, whether you're going to be serious about it or not. I have a cello. I don't play it very well, but I've got one. Because I just love the sound of it, and it's just nice sometimes to play around with something different. Gotcha. But just follow your passions. Find out the music that you listen to that inspired you to pick it up. Learn it. Learn how to do that. Follow it. Expand your horizons, but never forget what it was that excited you in the first place.
Got you. And if people want to know more about what you're doing or check in projects that you've got going in the future, what's the best website for folks to look for?
Wow, that's a really good one. I can be seen on Facebook. I have to admit, I am not the best social media guy. But the Candlebox website and whether Twitter, Facebook, or the actual direct website are always good. You can do a search on that. A search on my name will bring up a bunch of things. PeteRG you can search that website. Those are probably the two most active ones of all the stuff that I'm doing, because those are both things that always have something cooking.
Nice. Well, Adam, thank you so much for taking time. Obviously, you're a busy guy, that's always a good thing. Busy is always good.
That's the goal.
We appreciate you taking a moment to chat with us and share your story and all this information. Folks, make sure you check out, if you haven't already, Adam Kury, Candlebox. Look for upcoming projects and things, or maybe see him at Fantasy Camp.
That's right. Yeah, I'm hoping to do a few more of those. Those are a good time.
It sounds like those are a blast. Well, thanks again, man. Folks, you've seen it here on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you, everybody.